Hey everyone, and welcome to another Game Explained discussion. I'm your host, Derek Bittner, and I'm joined today by Ted and Catherine to discuss the recently released trailer for Dragon Quest XI. So let's get started. Alright guys, so Dragon Quest XI, more details are starting to come out. We got the opening trailer, we got a little bit more gameplay as far as just walking around the world, and this game is looking gorgeous. So who better to bring on than the two biggest Dragon Quest fans I know? And Ted, what'd you think of this new look at the game?
Gosh, this is one of the most beautiful looking games that I've seen in a long time. It's obviously I love Dragon Quest. That's no surprise to anybody who knows anything about me, but we had gone so far without really any clean looks at the game. We had that off-cam stuff about a year ago now, actually, and I think we'd gotten a handful of screenshots since then, but this is the first time we've seen the game in motion with music, and it all just looks fantastic. The Akira Toriyama art, as always, is great. I love all the new characters. The overworld looks it looks spectacular, and I think I've needed a modern RPG like this for a while, and I'm just super excited to get my hands on this one.
I'm of a similar mindset. The game looks amazing. It's really the biggest jump in graphics I've seen for a franchise, really, because we in the West have not at this point gotten Dragon Quest X, which was on the Wii, and the games before that were Dragon Quest IX on the DS and Dragon Quest VIII on the PS2. So we're basically skipping an entire generation of consoles, with the PS3 sort of first delve into HD graphics and going into the PS4, and it looks like the transition has been everything I could have wanted. The environments look amazing, and it's incredibly immersive in a way that's hard to get in the sort of traditional Dragon Quest top-down style. While they made this big graphical jump on the PS4 version, I really appreciate the nod to the sort of series roots, with the 3DS version having a 2D SNES style mode, which also just looks really charming and reminds me a lot of the DS Dragon Quest remakes of 4 and 5.
The 3D mode on the 3DS also looks really good too. It's a step up from the Dragon Quest VII remake in a lot of different ways. It's got a more, I'd say, chibi-ish style than that one, which is kind of odd considering that Dragon Quest VII was also pretty chibi in a lot of ways, but it just looks a lot cleaner, and I love the extra. It looks a lot more like a 3D Dragon Quest game than, whereas, I don't know how much sense I'm making. The 3DS version of Dragon Quest VII, while it still looked great, it looked like a 3D remake of something, where this looks like the first true 3D Dragon Quest game we've gotten in that kind of style, and it does look fantastic. I love the little detail that cute little town had, and I know that you'll be able to switch between the 3D and the 2D styles whenever you want, and I think that's just a great addition, because I love both styles, and I don't know which one I'd want to spend the entire game playing. It might necessitate 2 playthroughs on that version just to experience both. But
so you're looking at 3 playthroughs of Dragon Quest XI.
That's not really that out of place for me, because I've played Dragon Quest IV at least 3 times. I've played Dragon Quest V 3 times. 7's only once, but that game's new and also 100 hours long. And I'm working on my second 3Q3 playthrough right now. So these are games that are very easy to play multiple times, just because they're so much fun, and they don't wear out their welcome, except for arguably 7, but that's a topic for another day.
And one advantage to facilitate multiple playthroughs of this game is that in addition to the main character, we've seen what appear to be 6 party members, meaning that assuming the game keeps the standard party of 4 that's been in most recent Dragon Quest games, that means you could have hero and 2 completely different lineups of characters. So if I were to play the HD version and have characters A, B, and C along with the hero, I could then play the 3DS version and have characters D, E, and F. So it really, the fact that I'm seriously considering buying both the PS4 and 3DS version, the fact that I know I can have, 2 very different gameplay experiences on them, thanks to the pretty substantial roster of characters, is certainly encouraging.
And that really does help. And going back to your comment on the graphics, Catherine, I think the jump from Dragon Quest 8 to 11, just in terms of the games we've gotten and seen, is the same jump that we've seen from 7 on PS1 to 8. And it just, again, makes this world so vibrant and alive. And seeing this field filled with monsters that you can battle, or I love that moment in the gameplay. You're riding a horse and you just run down one of the slimes, and it's like, oh, okay, well, that works too. If they're too strong, they'll just get out of the way. And it really is it looks good. The world is vibrant, and I think that's what I like so much about Dragon Quest games, is that they're colorful and fun and endearing in a way that a lot of other RPGs aren't. And it has that sort of classic feel. These aren't dour games. These are adventures. And that's really what's pulled me into the series over the years, and just makes me want to play more of the series. Because I'll be honest, I've only actually beaten the original Dragon Quest on NES and Dragon Quest IX on the DS. But I did play through the first continent of Dragon Quest VIII on PS2. That's what originally got me into the series. And I have the games. I just need to find the time to sit down and play all of them. And just all the little bits I see and hearing you guys talk about the games makes me want to get into the series and truly dive into these characters and these situations and love what they have. And 11 looks no different, and it's actually amazing to me how much effort they're putting into this with both the PS4 version and they've already announced that's going to be on Switch as well. So this is a PS4 and Switch version, and in addition to the 3DS version, which essentially looks completely different. I don't know if the stories are going to be the same or they're going to be slightly remixed, sort of the same way that Ni no Kuni was for the 3DS and PS3. But that's a lot of effort to put into this game to have multiple versions of the same game.
Yeah, that the work says for itself, and this definitely looks a lot more substantial than, say, the closest comparison I can think of is Smash Brothers 3DS and Wii U, but in that case, you were okay buying one or the other. Here, they do look significantly different enough where, obviously, I don't think you necessarily need to buy both, but if you did buy one instead of the other, you were getting a significantly different experience. Honestly, when it comes to the Switch version, though, or the PS4 version as well, what it actually kind of reminds me the most of, this is in a good way, is Xenoblade and Xenoblade Chronicles X. The way that the overworld looks reminds me of that as a lot, especially considering how expansive it is. And the big thing that gives me that vibe is the Gigantes, the big blue giant guy, just kind of standing in the background, kind of being like, "Hey guys, what you doing?" In Xenoblade, and in X, I'm assuming, I haven't played that one, there were just giant dinosaur monsters that were sitting around in the first field, and you were really dumb if you decide to go and fight that guy, because you'll lose. But, if you come back to that area later, you can go and fight that guy and, potentially get some really cool rewards. I have an inkling that that's basically going to be the same thing with that Gigantes in this area, and if the game is taking more cues from Xenoblade than just that, I can imagine this actually maybe doing well in the West for once, because Xenoblade and X both ended up being gigantic cult classics, and I can imagine if people latch onto this in the same way they latched onto that this could end up having a similar sort of success, which would be nice.
I noticed that too, Ted, about the fact that there was a Gigantes in the background and there were slimes and heel slimes around the player. So I was curious about that, because normally in Dragon Quest games, areas have a set difficulty of monsters that you encounter based on how far the game expects you to have progressed in the game. So the fact that there was a Gigantes, which is a much more difficult monster, in that area was kind of surprising to me. But the comparison to Xenoblade makes me wonder if it's that sort of thing where it's there, but you're not expected to fight it when you first see it.
And I think going along those same lines of Xenoblades, even just beyond having different level monsters and encouraging you to return to places so you can fight them, is the fact that in this little gameplay segment, we only have the hero and one other character. What was the name of him again? You actually found that out, right, Catherine?
In Japanese, it's Kamyu, but apparently he's been confirmed for English localization to be named Camus.
Okay, so him and Canis are the only two in the party, yet you already have your horse, so you can much more quickly traverse these landscapes, which I'm trying to think of another Dragon Quest game that gives you an ability to travel so quickly so early on.
There's basically none, although no other Dragon Quest game has really had any need for you to travel this quickly on the overworld, because the overworld was just the overworld. You walked pretty swiftly across it, and the actual exploration tended to happen in dungeons and in towns. The first sort of travel thing you would get was typically like a boat and then some sort of flying device, which is always different. The horse is pretty unprecedented. It looks really, really cool. Obviously, there's some sort of Zelda vibes going off by riding it, but the opening cutscene, which has a lot of nice little hidden details, has you like leaving what seems to be a first town on the horse. My gut's telling me you have the horse for pretty much the majority of the game, at least after like a tutorial area at the very start.
So some details about the sort of opening of the game and the very beginning of the game's plot have been revealed. The main character, hero character, is in a village, I think it's called Ishi, where when young men and women are 16, they go through a coming of age ritual of sorts. And during that ritual, the hero character finds out that he is in fact a reincarnation of a hero in the that lived in that land a long time ago. So he said, and he has a mark on his hand that can, like, which honestly sounds very similar to certain events in Dragon Quest VII that can sort of, like, the mark can flare up at certain times and protect him or save him. So he goes out on a journey having to do with this destiny as the reincarnation of the hero. And we see in the opening cutscene the hero leaving his hometown on the horse. That scene with the girl whose name is confirmed to be Emma and is a childhood friend of the hero who goes through the coming of age ceremony at the same time, where he pets the dog's head and then leaves on the horse. So I agree, Ted, you're definitely going to have the horse from the beginning of the game. Yeah, I mean, the closest thing I can think of to a Dragon Quest game letting you travel so quickly is Dragon Quest VII, where you got the boat very quickly, but there was very few places to go because of how that game is designed. The boat didn't really mean much. But
yeah, you could go all over the ocean, but there's nothing there.
Yeah, I agree. There's never been this level of just exploration in any Dragon Quest game I know of.
Honestly, except for the first game, where you were expected to kind of poke your head around everywhere and then run into monsters that were too strong and then, like, run with your tail between your legs. You know? A lot of this stuff for this game is a callback to the original, even to in the case of the music, because the Dragon Quest theme has been mostly the same throughout the years, but there's been a handful of different openings. There was one opening that was in games 1 through 3, one that was like 4 through 8, and then there was one that was used from 9 to the modern day. But the new trailer has kind of a slightly remixed version of the original opening. And, you know, that combined with a bunch of different things, like the opening having you collect multicolored orbs, which is a direct callback to Dragon Quest III. The party setup seems to be more, each character has a specific role as opposed to having a class system, which brings shades of Dragon Quest IV. There's a lot of callbacks to older games and references from older games and even newer games, because if you look at the intro scene, they're like the very first character you see other than the slime is a girl in a red dress with pigtails, and then if you skip later on into the cutscene, you see a girl with a similar outfit and hairstyle, but she's much younger, which is kind of similar to the Cursed King from Dragon Quest VIII. So they're pulling inspiration from all over the place in this game, and I feel like they're really trying to make it a love letter to Dragon Quest as a whole as well, and bring back fans that have ever played a Dragon Quest game.
I can definitely see that. Like, the first thing I thought of when we saw, like, the merchant guy with the red hat and the white mustache was Torneko, like an older Titan Torneko from 4.
Absolutely. No, he definitely is supposed to be very similar.
And I'm like looking at him, it's like, okay, I wonder what he's gonna do. And then later in that opening cutscene, he has like the Wolverine claws out and he's going to town on this monster. I'm like, oh damn, he's really ready to kick some ass. And I like there's not really much to go off of from these characters, but the characters they have shown do look pretty interesting just from a design standpoint, and a lot of them actually I find are not quite as Toriyama looking as they usually do. The one that stands out to me the most, not even part of the main like player cast, was when they showed that castle with the king and I don't know if it's sons or guards or whatever, but they're standing there and I'm looking at their designs and they're not nearly as Toriyama looking as one would expect. They're almost like sort of that, especially the guy in the white armor is very, I don't know, pretty boy look. And that not in the way that Toriyama usually draws for Pretty Boy. So that was fascinating to me that they're actually changing up the art style a little bit for certain characters.
Yeah.
The characters in general seems very similar to 4 in that each character has its own role, and we did see what everyone uses for weapons. The blue-haired thief Kamyu, he wields dual swords. We see that the two blonde girls, the one with the braids who appears to at some point become a very small child, and the blonde girl who wears green and plays a harp, they both appear to wield some sort of wand or staff type weapon and use magic. The dancer guy, seen in like a sort of performance area in his initial appearance, he has a rapier. The martial artist girl with the purple hair, she appears to attack with kicks, because multiple times we see her not using her hands but kicking humans and enemies.
Yeah, with the great scene of her kicking the two bandits that are stealing something and they fall down the stairs.
Yeah. So and the martial art, the merchant character who looks very similar to Torneko is the one wielding claws. I don't know if there's any, I can't think of any Dragon Quest character who attacks with kicks, so I have to wonder what sort of if she'll equip like boots or what, because I can't think of any character who's used that. The martial artists type characters in games I've seen generally use claws.
Yeah, that seems to be the case throughout pretty much the entire series, is martial artists use claws. Merchants have all sorts of different weapons, they have a few special weapons that they typically can equip, but they're also, they can also use swords and stuff and are generally just a slightly less effective fighter in that space. It's really interesting, Derek, that you brought up the two castle guards as well, because there are multiple scenes where you see them, chasing the heroes, and there's one where, there's a scene where, the purple-haired guard seems to be kneeling before some sort of shadowy figure. I can't really tell from the gameplay footage if that's supposed to be the king or it's... Oh, no, it looks like it's the king. But this seems to be a Dragon Quest game where maybe it's not human villains, but there's definitely human antagonists, which is very, very, very rare for Dragon Quest. You can probably count the number of times where there have been major human antagonists in a Dragon Quest game on one hand.
I mean, it's really, you said there's 1 in 3, but he's more for comic effect. There's a humanoid antagonist in 4. I know there's 1 in 8.
Yeah,
I don't know about...
Dolmagus. He's
And
I thought you were going to say Marcello. No spoilers for 8, please, but I do know that Marcello is not on your side entirely, at least.
I didn't get far enough for that. All I know is when I played 8, the idea is you're chasing after Dolmagus, who is the one to curse the king and the princess, and he's just appears to be some sort of jester.
There's also Terry in Dragon Quest VI, where he plays an antagonistic role throughout the first half, 2/3 of the game as well. So, human bad guys in Dragon Quest are very, very rare. And seeing as, at least in this opening, they're playing up the king, and especially the purple-haired knight, because he's the one who is, in the dramatic sword clash with the hero, which, makes him seem like, maybe not the main villain, but the main force of the villain, the main face of the villain. So
I always think of, in Final Fantasy terms, there's generally the real villain and then the sort of rival. The Turks when Sephiroth is the real villain, or the Cypher when Edea and Ultimisia are the real villains, the rival character that sort of tests the hero. It seems like that's what they're going for with at least one of the guards. And I have to wonder if there's going to be something like Chrono Trigger where one of the guards ends up joining the party at some point. Obviously, no idea what they're going for here, but certainly something that comes to my mind when I see a villain humanoid character.
The game in general just looks fantastic, and I'm really looking forward to it. The game is supposed to come out sometime early next year in Japan. Have we gotten an official English confirmation yet?
No.
Or are we still... Okay, we're still waiting.
We're still waiting, but I will say I actually have a lot more confidence in this coming out internationally than a long time, because, you know, as you said, we never got 10. Granted, that was an MMO, so I can kind of understand why Square Enix didn't bring it over.
I believe it was a server issue as well as a localization issue, because not only would it be the time and money to translate the game, but additional money to maintain servers in the US for a game that, you know, likely would not be as nearly as widely played as it was in Japan.
Yeah, and I mean, I like Dragon Quest. I'm not sure if I would, like, extensively play a Dragon Quest MMO. I haven't even been able to pick up any MMO, not, you know, no matter what it is. So I like the idea, but I'm not sure if it would have stuck. So it's probably not too surprising. But then I go back to the idea, even with Final Fantasy, is like, why do you actually call it a mainline title in the series? Just call it Final Fantasy Online or Dragon Quest Online and keep it out of the main numbering systems. That annoys me so much, because it feels like it's incomplete.
Yeah, that probably would have made Dragon Quest X do better in Japan, because it's one of the less successful Dragon Quest games in Japan, and that's because it was so different from what people expected from a main number Dragon Quest game. For people who are less familiar, Japanese fans for Dragon Quest are very, very picky. They don't like things to change too much. So, like, having it be like an MMO, a lot of people got turned off, which is honestly probably why there are so many old school callbacks in this one, where they're saying, like, this is a real, quote-unquote, quotation marks, Dragon Quest game. Please play it. I'm kind of wondering, like, assuming we do get it, which I don't think we can safely assume, but we can it certainly looks more likely than others. I'm kind of wondering when we'll get it. I honestly think that 2017 would be a stretch to see it in the West. I'd hope early 2018, but, you know, you can never know. Like, Dragon Quest VII 3DS didn't come out until, like, 3 years after its Japanese release, so we might be waiting a while.
But we're also getting 8 not too long after that. But again, I think they were getting localized at the same time. So it's really hard to determine, although I do think it'd be a kind of a bad idea to release Dragon Quest XI in the fall. This screams spring or summer game to me. Like, if you want to do it, have it be successful.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Because I have no idea how well Dragon Quest Builders did, but again, that got released in October, November, I believe. So, yeah, it always feels like a dumb idea to put this sort of niche game that might do well against the heavy hitters of that year. And nah.
Yeah.
But I am relatively confident this will get released in the US and internationally, if only because we've really seen a resurgence in Dragon Quest interest, or at least releases from Square. As you said, we got Dragon Quest VII, Dragon Quest VIII is coming, we got Dragon Quest Heroes before, and we got Builders, and the thing I'm shocked about is we're actually getting Dragon Quest Heroes 2. If that's getting localized, that's a really good sign for 11 in my mind.
Absolutely. And Heroes 2, do either of you recall when Heroes 2 was released in Japan?
Sometime early 2016, I believe. Hold on, I
think it was getting released in Japan, like around the same time that it was close to release in Japan when we were finally getting the original Heroes.
May 27th, 2016.
Okay, so I knew it was being talked about.
We're getting it less than a year later. That's not that bad.
There's not as much to translate in a Musou game as there is in a full-on Dragon Quest. It's still a good sign, I would agree. Like, things are looking our way when it comes to Dragon Quest, which is nice to hear for once.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah, because those handful of years where, like, we didn't get anything regarding any news in Dragon Quest, like, we didn't hear anything about the Monsters ports, like the Monsters remake or Joker 3 or the 3DS remakes of 7 and 8. Like, there was a good, 2-3 years where we got nothing in regards to Dragon Quest, and it was kind of a depressing time to be a fan. So to see this resurgence is super, super uplifting for me.
Maybe they are trying to build up a fan base leading towards 11. or they're just trying to capitalize on it. Who knows? But I'm excited. I think there's a lot of different ways for people to play depending on their means and what they have available. And other than 10, I don't think any other Dragon Quest game has gotten initial release on so many different systems.
No, it's usually just one, as far as I can tell.
And not even 10 counts for that, because it was originally on Wii, but then it started getting ported to other systems in order to support, expand the fan base.
Shockingly, an MMO on the Wii might not work super well. Like, who would have thought that?
Yeah. No, it's so good to see. I really hope 11 is successful over here. This series deserves attention, and I don't know if it'll ever get it, but especially people who want classic RPGs, this is where you're going to get it.
It doesn't get more classic than Dragon Quest, honestly.
Square has really taken Final Fantasy into a very different direction from where Final Fantasy was in the SNES and NES era. And, I know a lot of people really like that, and that's great. But when I started playing Dragon Quest, I was like, this feels like what I've wanted from an RPG for a long time. And if, Dragon Quest, for the most part, is very rooted in what it is. So, yeah, I'm really glad that 11 is continuing in that tradition.
That's why we have all the spin-offs to do all the crazy things with Dragon Quest.
Exactly.
But, any final thoughts on the game? Anything you didn't mention that you wanted to say?
I know that Catherine's probably going to end up oogling the purple-haired martial artist chick the entire time because she's very predictable. Other than that, it just looks fantastic. I want to hear that, what would make the Nintendo Switch event the best for me is just an official announce for the official Western release date for the game. Like, if they announced that at the Switch event, that would make me super, super happy. Mm-hmm. I don't think it'll happen, but that's my hope for that event anyway.
Catherine?
There's a few interesting things I noted in watching the trailer. For one, the martial artist and the merchant type character were in a location that clearly had some, Chinese/Japanese looking architecture and the red paper lanterns. So that, to me, suggests we're going to get a very diverse world in some ways. 4 and 5 and 7 really had a largely Western feel to them. From what I've seen of Dragon Quest 3, that's really one of the most global looking games in the Dragon Quest series, because many of the locations in that game are based off of real world locations, like a not Japan and a not America. So the fact that one of the locations appears to be modeled after China or Japan is pretty exciting as far as the diversity of environments that we'll see in this sort of really beautiful graphical portrayal. The fact that the 3DS version, I love the 3-dimensional and 2-dimensional options. So one thing I noted is that while in the HD version, in the corner, the current location is displayed, and I noticed that was written in kanji, largely included kanji. The 3DS version on the 3D screen, it displayed furigana, which is the readings for kanji, which are helpful for children or people who don't speak Japanese at a level where they know many kanji. So that makes me wonder what sort of age rating they're going for. For some context, a game like Animal Crossing includes furigana because many of the players of that game are young, whereas visual novels generally do not include furigana because they assume the reader is older. So I'm curious what age they're going for, and whether that's something that is in all the versions. Interestingly, I don't see furigana on the 2D style gameplay, so I can't tell if that's a limitation or if furigana is an option. And then on the 3D style of the 3DS version, there's an NPC where when the main character walks by him, a text box appeared above his head asking where an item was. So I can't tell if that's... It actually reminds me a lot of how in Builders, characters in that game would have text boxes above their heads reminding you of quests they'd ask you to do. So I'm curious if that's like a plot quest that displays that sort of reminder, or dialogue box, or if it's a side quest. And that's not something I've seen in any of the Dragon Quest games I've had experience in. So just little things about the gameplay seem interesting to me, and I'm really curious to learn more.
Yeah, it's interesting. I almost like you talk about how the different reading levels for the 3DS version and the PS4 version. It makes me wonder if maybe the 3DS version is designed more for kids, while the PS4 version is designed more for older fans, which would also make sense. And
yeah, it fits the systems well, where a young kid is more likely to own a 3DS than a PS4. It just makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, there wasn't any real dialogue in the footage of the 3DS, the PS4 version that we got. It was just in the environments, and the kanji was in the corner, explaining where the character was at that moment.
Well, there was that very short scene of the hero talking to Camus was his name.
Yeah,
he doesn't. I'm looking at it right now, and he doesn't use the furigana either.
Mm-hmm.
So Derek might be right. Maybe they're going for a different audience with them. Of course, I'm only a very basic. I only have a basic knowledge of Japanese, so it's hard for me to tell looking at the kanji that one character like Camus was using, whether it's that those kanji were kanji that children would have known. But I don't think so. I think those look pretty advanced, at least some of them.
As for me, I pretty much said everything I wanted. I just really excited for Dragon Quest XI. I really also want to use 2017 as a sort of jumping off point, and hopefully start working my way much more through the series and prepare myself for it. I say that a lot with a lot of different games, and it never happens, but hopefully this time it actually does. Free time is a premium very often for me, but we'll see. I know I fell in love with builders, and I loved Heroes before it, so I'm all on board. Alright, I think that covers it for our Dragon Quest XI discussion, so thank you for watching, and if you like this video, be sure to like us on Facebook and Twitter at GameXplain. And Ted, where can they find you at?
So I'm Catherine, and the other person's Ted. Wait. Anyway, currently we're doing a playthrough of Dragon Quest Heroes. This is both of our first times playing the game, despite being big Dragon Quest fans, and it's a lot of fun. So if you're interested in Dragon Quest and haven't seen too much of it, or if you're a longtime Dragon Quest fan and want to see us fail spectacularly, you should check that out because it's a fun playthrough.
Awesome, yeah, I've been watching myself, and it's been a lot of fun seeing you guys react to a lot of these things for the first time, so that's always a good time in my book. And of course, stay tuned to Game Explained for more on Dragon Quest and other things gaming too. Until next time, bye.